Hello everyone, welcome to the Concern Podcast, where we unpack political, social, economic and cultural stories shaping our world. I am Emmanuel Taban. Now, in the last few days, there was an African Union Heads of State Summit that was held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, that brought together all heads of states and governments of most of the African countries. But also in attendance was the United Nations and other international friends for most African countries. And on the last day of that summit, there was a meeting that was held, a high-level committee meeting, also called the C5, which was led by the South African President, Cyril Ramaphosa. And that meeting was mainly to deliberate and focus on the situation of South Sudan, the conflict that is ongoing and how the country is preparing towards the election that is scheduled for December this year. And in that meeting, there were so many people who attended. United Nations was there, the Intergovernmental Authority on IGAD in short was there, and some member states of East Africa, Rwanda, Kenya, were as well in attendance, and Nigeria as well. And in that meeting, there appeared to be a unanimous call for the government of the Republic of South Sudan and His Excellency President Salva Kiir to actually release political detainees, and to be specific, His Excellency Dr.Riek Machar. The people who attended, the member states who attended that meeting, called for the President of the Republic of South Sudan to release the first Vice President, Dr. Machar, from detention and all other political detainees as a way to prepare the country for the forthcoming elections that is scheduled for the December 2026. Now, when that statement was read and when those calls were met by those member states who attended that meeting, so many people received that with mixed reactions. There are people who agree and say, yes, the government of the Republic of South Sudan and His Excellency President Salva Kiir has to release Dr. Machar in order for the country to go for a peaceful elections and to create a credible, a free and fair environment for the conduct of the election. But other people looked in a very different angle and say, no, South Sudan is a sovereign state. South Sudan has its own legal system, and South Sudan has established its court to look at the issue of Machar, and therefore the issue of South Sudan has to be left to South Sudan and its system. In other words, what these people are saying is that the issue of Machar can only be determined by the courts that is established and that is carrying out the prosecution, and not any other member state or any other friend of South Sudan has to actually tell the government of South Sudan on what to do on the issue of Machar. The issue of Machar should be left only to the courts, and that if the President of the Republic of South Sudan or the government of South Sudan attempt to release First Vice President Machar, that would be unfair and that would be unjust to the families of those who lost their loved ones during the incident that happened in Nasser. Now, for context, for those of you who might not know about the story of Machar, Machar was arrested last year and put in house arrest for allegedly being behind the incident that happened in one of the counties, in Nasser County, in the northern parts of the country, where several people were killed and a major general as well was killed. And when that incident happened, the government established a committee to carry out investigations, and the committee came out with their findings and discovered that Machar was behind that incident in Nasir with his close allies. And Machar from that time was put under house arrest, and his friends and allies were as well put in detention. And from that time, charges were made against them, and the court was established to carry out the prosecution of Machar. And right from that time, that prosecution process has been going, and it appears not to be ending any soon. And even that the country has declared for an election, it appears as if the elections will find Machar still in this prosecution. And this is making so many people worried about the state of South Sudan should the country heads towards an election in the absence of Machar, or when Machar is in detention. So many friends got worried, and for that reason, during the recently concluded summit in Addis Ababa, the friends and other people called for the immediate release of the first vice president to prepare the country for the elections and prepare a very good environment, free and fair, for the elections. Now today, I want to pose a very big question in this video. Is it fair? Is it just? Is it strategically good for the government of the Republic of South Sudan and His Excellency President Salva Kiir to release First Vice President Machar on the calls made by these international friends and United Nations, IGAD, and those who said that Machar should be released? Is it fair? Is it fair? Is it fair to the family of the general who was killed during the Nasir incident when they see that Machar is released and his allies? Now, I'm not saying that Machar was truly behind the incident that happened in Nasir. But when allegations are made against someone, that person has to prove himself right, that he is not the one behind that incident. And the only way that he can prove himself is when the entire issue is taken through a judicial process. It is taken through the legal process, just like what it is happening today. Now, the international community or the international friends of South Sudan calling for the immediate release of Machar would be, according to my view, would be an interference with the sovereignty of the country. And this does not mean that I have issues for Machar, or I have issues against Machar, or I don't like to see him released. I do want to see Machar released because I also have a clear understanding of the impact of the country going into an elections when Dr. Machar is in detention. I clearly understand that. I know that it is very dangerous for the country to go into an elections when a section of the population feels like it is a deliberate move for the government of South Sudan and President Kiir to get the country into an election while Machar is in detention. I know how dangerous it is. But I also know that it is more dangerous for the President and the government of the Republic of South Sudan just to ignore all these charges that were made against Machar and just go ahead and release Machar without any legal and justification that Machar is not behind the incident that happened in Nasir. And I'm not saying that he is behind the incident, but there has to be a very judicious and legal, scientific way of Machar proving himself that he is not the one behind it, right? So it is very important that when a very young country in the status of South Sudan, when this country is being built, it is built on the foundation of the legal and justice system or the judiciary system being very strong. It is very important. And this issue of Machar is one of the reasons that will set a very strong legal foundation for South Sudan. the issue of Machar is going to set a very strong legal foundation for the country and judicious foundation for the country. Because what does it mean? If Machar is taken through the entire process until the end, and he is found guilty or innocent, this would have set a precedent. This would have set a culture that there is no one in the country who is above the law. That even when you hold a very prominent position, like the first vice president position, you can actually be prosecuted. You can be taken to courts. And that you need to prove yourself that actually you are not guilty. That is the precedent that would have been set. Before we close today's episode, here's a quick message from our sponsor, Wanit.co. If you've been planning to build a website but the cost has been holding you back, Wanit.co makes it affordable and stress-free this time around. Whether you are an individual, a non-profit organization, or a business, Wanit.co designs professional websites starting from as cheap as $250. Individuals can actually launch with a starter website of up to 7 pages and a free email, or choose an advanced option with unlimited pages, a professional portfolio, and branding support. For non-profit organizations, they can select flexible packages from basic websites to premium solutions with e-commerce features and ongoing support. And for business companies, Wanit.co delivers company-ready website with hosting, staff training, and multilingual options and online stores. And the best part of it is actually that you can build your dream website within your budget. Wanit.co is an affordable, accessible, and professional partner. And to get started, you can actually visit Wanit.co or email them at info@wanit.co, or you can get in touch with them through their WhatsApp number at +12265043322. Wanit.co, proudly affiliated with Jobs to Apply. And if you're wondering of what I'm talking about, here are some samples of website created by Wanit.co. You can see them right here.